Hello, everyone. We are going to get started with our Ward 2 NPA meeting. Welcome. I hope you enjoyed the dinner and music. Let's give everybody a hand one more time, our musicians and our chefs. My name is Lauren. I am on the Ward 2 steering committee. I use she, her pronouns. I am your lovely facilitator for today. I haven't done this for a while, so I'm a little bit out of practice. But just real quickly, I'd like to introduce the rest of our steering committee. Kaysen is taking notes, and Erica, and Charlie is running around. If you have any questions throughout today's meeting or at any time, feel free to flag one of us, and we will get help, whatever you need. So before we get started, I just want to quickly highlight, can we have a motion to approve the agenda for today? See Molly and a second, Jacob, love it, love that teamwork. All right, so we have about 10 minutes for public forum, and as a reminder, if you have any announcements, please share your name, pronouns, and what street you live on. Does anyone have anything for public forum?
Hey, everybody. Who here likes cookies? Anybody like cookies? Anybody? Okay. Who likes to support local artists? Anybody? Okay, all right, one last question. Who here likes good music and or dancing? Anybody? Okay, good. So, hey, I'm part of a band, Burlington's own Samba Tucada, Samba Street Band. And we are putting on a Brazil night tomorrow night at Arts Riot. That's right, Arts Riot tomorrow night. We're going to have a Brazil night with Samba Tucada and with Will Patton and Patuscada. We're going to have a great party. We're going to do some great music. We're going to do some great dancing. We're going to have Shannon Kelly actually come out and teach us some dancing. If you go like, I don't know how to dance samba, don't worry about it. Come on out. Doors open 7:30, music starts 8 o'clock, Arts Riot tomorrow. Be there, poster over there if you want more information. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Kaysen, I'm on the steering committee, but I am also the director of operations for the Peace and Justice Center here in town. This Friday, so before you go to Brazil night, if you're feeling up for it, at 5:30 p.m. at the Peace and Justice Center, we are sending holiday cards to the prison. We're going to be sending a bunch of holiday cards to CRCF and just some of our incarcerated neighbors. So if you want to come send a bunch of holiday cards to some of our incarcerated neighbors, come out to the Peace and Justice Center 5:30 tomorrow. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jason. Yeah.
Hey folks, I'm Kate. I'll be passing a sign-up sheet around. This is I've been asked by the Vermont Coalition for Palestinian Liberation to ask for folks to sign up and provide their contact information so they can be updated on what's happening with their campaign for an apartheid-free community resolution on the town meeting day ballot.
And the City Council is scheduled to decide whether it's going to go on the ballot this coming Monday. The meeting starts at 5:30, and the public forum is at 6. This is very timely for people to get involved.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Roxanne Muse. I live on Pitkin Street. Tomorrow night at 6:30, there's a Pitkin Street indoor block party. Anyone who lives on Pitkin Street or nearby is welcome to come. It's potluck style, but you can come anyways. There's going to be a big pot of chili and non-dairy hot cocoa. You can look up my Front Porch Forum post about it for more info.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Andre Clark. I live on Intervale Avenue. I'm the founder of a local volunteer organization, Street Cats Burlington, that does outreach to the unhoused community. We are doing a winter supply drive. I brought a list of items we're collecting if anyone is interested, and we're also doing an event also tomorrow at Desposito from 8 to 12. Proceeds will benefit the food bank, and we'll be collecting food and supplies as well. Thank you.
Any other public forum? It sounds like everyone's going to have a very busy Friday. Going once? Oh, I do see someone online. Megan, do you want to go ahead? Thank you, Megan. Any other public forum? All right. Well, like we said, it's a very busy Friday tomorrow. I hope you find something great to do that someone has talked about. There is more information for a lot of what was talked about on the back table or outside the door if you have any questions, and we're also including it in our notes. There's a lot to keep up with, but very exciting. All right. Well, I am very excited to introduce Ed Baker, who is going to be giving a presentation on the importance of overdose prevention centers in our community. So I thank you for coming, and we are very excited. And Bella Fern is also joining, and I'm very excited to give them the table to learn more.
Hello? Oh. Am I on? No, I don't think so. Here.
Hello.
There you go.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ed Baker, my colleague Bella Fern. First of all, thank you so much for having us here this evening for a nice dinner and nice company. I'm going to begin by asking Bella to introduce herself, and then I'll introduce myself.
Hi, everyone. Nice to see you all. I live in Ward 2 as well, and I cannot believe I have not been to one of these, so thank you so much for the warm welcome. Just wanted to say that. My name is Bella Fern. I use she, her pronouns, and I work for Decriminalize Vermont Coalition. We are a coalition of organizations and members across the state that advocates for drug policy to support harm reduction and those who are suffering in public. So that is I can tell you more about what we do in a little bit.
Thank you, Bella. Now, we're gonna try to be, we'll give you a general presentation on overdose prevention centers and the, the issues that we face in Burlington today. But we're really here, we want to hear what you have to say. We want to field your questions, and we want to answer your questions, because we know there's a lot of information out there that is inaccurate, and we want to be accurate. For my part, I've been in a full recovery from drug addiction for 40 years. 40 years. Yeah, yeah. I've had the gift and the privilege to have a second chance at life, and it's been a beautiful life. Master's degree, graduate degree, lovely wife, children, a career that's been meaningful, hobbies, life. And I'm a person who I've experienced being unsheltered for a number of years. I've experienced injecting drugs in public places. You know, I've contracted a fatal disease that I had to go into treatment for. I've been through it. For some reason, I stayed alive. And when I see the people that we see today in Burlington, each one of them, I see myself. And this is and I know I'm preaching to the choir. I know you care. So we're here tonight to tell you that the good news, the really good news, is that in the midst of this terrible disaster that we see, that is mind-boggling and overwhelming, there are things we can do. Medically necessary, science-based, compassion-based things that work that we can do. And we're going to need your help. Make no mistake about it. Come 2025, we're going to need your help. We're going to need your support. Without your support, it won't happen. So I'll give it over to Bella and we'll begin our agenda.
Yeah, thank you, Ed. And just real quick, I just wanted to say I got into this work. I've been a community organizer in Burlington for many years now, but I got into this work. I lost a family member to an overdose who passed away in her vehicle because she didn't have a safe place to use. So this is particularly important to me as well on a personal level because I know that if she would have had an overdose prevention center or a safe place to use, she would be alive today. So I just wanted to add that to the space as well. And I'll just we're going to do a little bit of slideshow, but I promise you this will not be a slideshow saturated presentation. But just really quickly, we're going to talk about what an overdose prevention center is. Ed, do you want to talk a little bit about it first, then I can jump into some other notes, or do you want me to start?
Sure. I mean, basically, you have to, well, number one, we have to look at the population we're talking about. So we're talking mainly in downtown Burlington of a population that is highly unhoused, unsheltered. There's a lot of co-occurring disorders, a lot of mental health issues along with addiction. These are people, the people that the Overdose Prevention Center will serve are people who have been disenfranchised for decades. They are alienated from our system. Our system does not work for them. In fact, our system has failed them multiple times. We all know what stigma is. You know, we've lived in this country for long enough. We've all been inundated with false beliefs, stereotypes, judgmental feelings about people who use drugs. These are the people we're talking about. An overdose prevention center is specifically designed to offer them what I like to call unconditional safety. In other words, come here, we're not demanding anything of you, we're not expecting anything of you. Come as you are, we are going to give you services because we value you and we want you to stay alive while we offer you services. This is not the way the regular system works. There's always requirements, there's always rules, there's always regulations. Of course, we have some basic rules and regulations, but there's no of the traditional requirements. So you have people who are using drugs, not being penalized or seen with a punitive attitude or judged, who can come to the Overdose Prevention Center, use drugs, and develop relationships. That's the key. The key is creating a situation where people who have been disenfranchised can actually begin to develop trusting relationships with people who can connect them to services, health-promoting services. Not because they have to accept a referral, but because at some point in the vehicle of that relationship, they will want a referral. They will be motivated to harm themselves less, harm reduction. So if you see it as kind of a scaffolding process, less harm, okay, maybe you stay at this level for a few months, then less harm, less harm, less harm. Over time, people begin to develop health-promoting behaviors. We've seen this in many overdose prevention centers. They work.
Yeah, thanks, Ed. And just to add a little bit, because that's a lot of information and I don't want to dump too much on you, but there are a few goals to overdose prevention centers. This was developed by the Vermont Department of Health, so there's guidelines that were developed by the Vermont Department of Health to help us implement an overdose prevention center in Burlington. And the goals really are to reduce drug-related harms like infection, overdose, harmful drugs, additives, a lot of different things are added to substances today, prevent overdose, of course, provide a place for people to have recovery services, treatment services, and harm reduction services. And then also I think what's really worth noting is to improve public health and safety. We're gonna use this term a lot tonight. It's called, oh my gosh, I'm spacing on it right now. Public suffering, thank you. We're gonna use this term tonight, public suffering, and what that really means is the folks that we are seeing who are using in the street, and there's two victims involved in that. There's, of course, the victim of the person who is using that substance and is suffering in that space and on the street in winter a lot of the time, like we're seeing today. And then there's the person witnessing that, the person walking by. They're also a part of that relationship. So we're really trying to provide a space so both of those parties are not harmed in the process, and maybe even a lot of other benefits that come along with that as well, which we will definitely talk more about. So those are the primary goals of an overdose prevention center. We're going to get a little bit more into what those services are or can or are going to look like. This isn't set in stone what the Vermont Department of Health has put out, and just to add one more thing, overdose prevention centers are not new. They've been around for about 35 years globally. And in New York City, there's 2 overdose prevention centers that we're gonna pull a lot of research from, we already have, that are operating with great success and are reversing a lot of overdoses that are helping syringes in the area get picked up and cleaned up. So there's tons and tons of benefits. This is not new, this is not revolutionary. Just wanted to add that.
Yeah, you know, we could probably go on for a long time because there's really so much to say. You know, we have people using drugs in Burlington, you have people using drugs publicly in Burlington, you have people just disposing of drug supplies in public in Burlington. There's a lot of problems. An overdose prevention center gives these people a safe place to go to. It has to be set up right, it has to be staffed by the right people. People have to have the right attitude, the right kind of demeanor. The people have to feel comfortable there. But when the word gets out in downtown Burlington, we're going to see, believe me, a lot less of public drug use, public discarding of supplies, things of that nature. That's what they've seen in New York. All the research on all overdose prevention centers says that. Decreases public use, decreases syringe litter, decreases HIV, hepatitis C, endocarditis. The money saving to the city is astronomical. Police services, emergency services, sanitation services, emergency room services, all decreased.
Do we want to talk a little bit about H72?
Yeah, you know, let me also say this about, there's a lot of misinformation about that. Oh, who's going to pay for this? Why are our taxpayer dollars going toward this? We could spend it on other things. Well, yes, absolutely. There are a lot of epic challenges that we face in Burlington today. So I'm not going to try to minimize that and convince someone that this is more important than some issue that they're concerned about. All these issues are important. But the wonderful thing about this is that there was something called the opioid settlement. It was a class action suit against the Purdue family, the Sackler family, Purdue, and a bunch of opioid manufacturers and distributors. As a result of winning this class action suit, tens of millions of dollars are flowing into Vermont for 18 years as a result of this suit. The money for the Overdose Prevention Center, funding for the Overdose Prevention Center, came directly from those funds. So this is funded through 2028 without any Vermont taxpayers' money. So we're in a golden position. The issue is, and we'll be calling on you because if you choose to support us, the issue is showing community support. We need to show community support within Burlington because there may be some challenges in 2025. You know, it's also a, this is not, it seems sudden, but it's not. There have been a number of legislative attempts in the Vermont State Legislature since 2017. All three attempts to pass legislation were vetoed by the governor. The last attempt, H72 this year, was the veto was overturned. So now there is statute, there's law that will enable an overdose prevention center, a pilot project to open in Burlington, and will have protection, you know, for the people who work at the center, for the agency that sponsors the center. They won't be able to be prosecuted. So it'll be, because there are illegal drugs which will be being used at the center, so there's protection. There's also, there's so much support. We have the city council, Milo is here. The city council has multiple times drafted resolutions in favor of an overdose prevention center. We have the current mayor and the previous mayor, Miro, and now Emma, who are totally in support. Emma has vowed to open an overdose prevention center by August 2025. We have the state's attorney, Sarah George, in support. We have the health department in support. We have the user community. Research has been done in downtown Burlington where people who are using drugs, the people we're talking about, are waiting for an overdose prevention center to open. They will use it. We have the provider community which will network with the overdose prevention center that is in support. And just let me say one more thing. We're talking about a very, very small geographic area. We're talking about really downtown Burlington. If you look at a heat map of overdose deaths, half the deaths in Chittenden County occur in downtown Burlington. So that is where the center will be.
Yeah, and Ed, you just covered a lot of kind of what the next slide is that Burlington is a really great place for this pilot program to be for a number of reasons. One of them being that the majority of the highest number of opioid-related fatalities and overdoses happens in Chittenden County and in this downtown area. So this is a really important, when you look at the state as a whole, that's what that graph is up there, or pie chart rather, that's what you're seeing, is this is why we're having it specific to Burlington. There are other places in the state that would definitely benefit from an overdose prevention center, and there are lots of different ways to work on this as far as when we're talking about rural towns and villages, but this is one solution. I will also just say that H72 is not just a one and done of Burlington being the only place that can have an overdose prevention center. It's specifically written that the overdose prevention pilot will be in Burlington. That's going to come with a bunch of research as well. And then other towns and cities throughout the state also can have those services and have an overdose prevention center as well. It's just the funding isn't there in this specific bill. And then another just reason that Ed really highlighted very well is that Burlington is great because we have an incredible we have a healthcare system. We have UVM, and then there are tons of organizations, nonprofits like Vermont Cares and a lot of other and Pathways, and a lot of folks already providing these services that are excited about collaborating in this process. So this is a very large community effort, and this is a great place to get this work started. Ed, did you want to add anything else before we move on?
Yeah, you know, I mean, I don't, the only person I really know in the room is Bella. So, you know, I'm going to say a couple of things, but that are a little risky. Oh, and I know Milo. And, you know, and what I'm going to say is true of Bella and Milo and me. And I believe it's true of you, too. That we are all, this is epic. This is epic. This is epic. You don't breathe and have a heart that's beating without caring deeply about what's going on. You know, you don't go through a day without thinking about it. What is going on? What are we going to do about this? Are we powerless in this? Can we do something about this? Who in this room wasn't brought up to care? We all care. We care deeply, and we don't know what to do. We've not been given the right kind of information. You know, we've not been led in a compassionate way. And we are all, Bella mentioned common suffering, public suffering. We are all victims of this. There is no other. This is about us. And in my book, this is a moral imperative. This is what separates us from people who don't care. We have to care about everybody, or we don't care about anybody. And this is, it's gone much too far, and that's why we're suffering. It was invisible for a long time. It's no longer invisible. Now we see it. Well, now that we see it, we have to do something about it. It's an imperative, and we know what to do about it.
Yeah, I'm thinking we can just go straight to questions. Yeah.
Okay, so we said we were gonna leave a time for questions, so we'll open the floor for questions.
Hey, I have just a few questions. One, what are we doing to prepare for the change in administration? I was just reading about how that may be challenged in the courts, overdose prevention centers. And then also, is there an opportunity for drug checking at OPCs, both for people who are using, but also for other drugs if people are, people do use recreationally? And then is there any kind of plans in place to prepare for like transportation? If it's in the city center and there's people using outside and they need to get to the OPC, how can we coordinate that?
Do you want me to talk about the checking first? Okay. Yeah, so I'm going to flip your questions around and answer the first one first, or the second one first. So yes, drug checking will be a part of the Overdose Prevention Center, so that service will be provided. And then the second part of your second question, can you just repeat that for me? Oh, transportation. That's a great question. I don't know, but let me look that up, and I can grab your email and answer that for you. Yeah. Oh, you can answer it, Ed. Never mind.
There really is. There's nothing that has been developed about. That's like a great question, because we'll bring it back to our group. That hasn't really been addressed yet. What's been addressed so far is getting this center at the epicenter of death, getting it right where people can walk to it. Because people are not going to be hailing a cab or getting on a bus or walking for 20 minutes. It has to be where they are. Absolutely essential. It's crucial. But let me talk to something else you said, because it's very, very important. You asked, how are we going to deal with opposition, I guess, or obstructionism? Was that it?
Yeah, I think it's just potentially, according to federal law, not technically allowed. How are we preparing to protect from any lawsuits?
Okay, well, we have New York City as an example. There are 2 existing overdose prevention centers in New York City that have been open for 3 years. We have one that just opened yesterday. They cut the ribbon yesterday in Providence, Rhode Island. We have a legislative protection here through the Vermont legislature, and we are a state, and we have rights as a state. So that's the way we're moving forward. The Department of Justice has been passive, even though there's a law prohibiting overdose prevention centers. It really is a misplaced law. It really doesn't. The law that's cited is not really, doesn't have anything to do with overdose prevention centers. It has to do with what's called crack houses, where a criminal landlord owns a building and gets in with drug dealers, and they have this building where they make a fortune by selling and allowing people to take drugs in the building. An overdose prevention center has nothing to do with that. We're here to save lives and connect people to health promoting services. So what I want to say tonight to this group, and probably the most important thing we'll say tonight to this group, is that you are the solution. We are bulking up for 2025, and there's nothing harder to stop than a well-organized group of people. So if Burlington says, we want an overdose prevention center, the state legislature has mandated into law, we have the money, we're going to do it. So each one of us is empowered by that fact.
I just wanted to add something really quickly. So H72 does have qualified immunity for civil, criminal, administrative folks in this space under Vermont law. So they are protected under Vermont law. And then strategizing, just to add a little bit more onto what Ed said on the federal level, the Drug Policy Alliance, which is how my work is funded, essentially has a collection of different lawyers and litigators who are working specifically on what is anticipated to be the worst case scenario in this next administration. And they're specifically using that law that Ed just mentioned, the crack house law, crack house law, and talking about different outlets in order to make sure that this is something that we can protect in that space. Yeah, and the ADA as well. Yeah, thank you. I hope we answered your question. That was a lot of information. So.
Yeah, thank you. And I just want to add, as when I'm doing outreach on the streets, connecting with people, even as they're using drugs, they don't fully want to be. There's just not a lot of resources or outs. So like the importance of this just can't be stressed enough. And then just like a plug for my program, have you guys connected with UVM's Master of Public Health program as like an ally in this?
We will trade information. I don't think we have, to my knowledge, so I will be talking to you after. Thank you.
Other questions?
Thanks to both of you for speaking so personally and eloquently about this. My question is just what is your response to the folks who who worry about OPCs bringing more users or bringing more people in crisis to our community, and the folks who are kind of wringing their hands about that, kind of contributing to the general malaise, I guess. I'm just kind of curious how you field that question. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I kind of see it as part of the engagement process of people. So the first thing I like to do is just validate people's fear of, crime, and is a real something that really people are really passionate about. Increase of crime is something that really a lot of folks are passionate about, specifically in this community too, but across the United States. So I like to say, I understand, there's fear in that. This may feel like something new, especially to the United States. The second thing I kind of like to point to is when I say, which I can bring the data up as well, but OPCs do not, all of the research that's been done globally of the 35 sites, they have not encouraged prolonged substance use. None of the data says that. In fact, some of the data suggests that it provides support and reduces crime and the substance use in the local area. So I don't know if anyone has ever heard the term NIMBY. There can be some of that in this in spaces where people are like, I love this idea, I don't want this in my space. Something that I like to say is, well, it actually might reduce the amount of crime in your neighborhood or in the area, in the surrounding area. And this is a coordinated effort. So the law enforcement as well as health providers and advocates are going to be involved in this process. This is a community process. So voices can be heard, especially when people are worried. So those are just kind of the two layers. I like to make sure they feel heard in the process and their fears are validated, and then also saying, this is what our data is suggesting, and this is what all the support services are going to go into play. Did you want to add anything else?
Yeah, I understand that fear, of course. You would have that fear because what we see happening, we're overwhelmed by it. But it's not happening because there's an overdose prevention center. It's just happening. And it's happening all over America, and it's happening all over the world. I've traveled to a few big urban centers, and just to express solidarity and be there and see what's going on. And, you know, this is epic. It's reached a proportion now where we must do something about it. And the question is, are we going to do something that is medically necessary, based in science and compassion? And the answer is yes. And the answer is that is an overdose prevention center. As Bella alluded to, the studies, and these are peer-reviewed studies over time. The studies show that there's either no increase at all in crime or there's a decrease in crime. And the same thing with drug use. People will use drugs less. People now are people with severe addiction, the people we're talking about, with co-occurring disorders. They're using drugs in a chaotic fashion, okay? You get enough money to get some drugs and take them. That's it. That's all that matters. Chaos. There's no peace, there's no safety, there's no health, there's chaos, and that's what we see. When a person begins to use drugs at an overdose prevention center, and think of how strange that sounds. Okay, we want a person to use drugs at an overdose prevention center. In the situation, that's progress, because they're no longer using drugs chaotically. Over time, they begin to use drugs in a stable fashion. That immediately causes a decrease in death, a decrease in other medical problems, a decrease in the disruption of public life. Now you have people that are coming to the Overdose Prevention Center that are using drugs in a stable fashion and are engaged in meaningful relationships, which they did not have prior to this. Out of that, so you have a harm reductionist that's sitting with the person, getting to know the person has come in, you know, every other day for X number of weeks. They get to know, people get to know each other. The harm reductionist is kind of seeing with the third eye and listening with the third ear. And when that person indicates that they want to harm themselves less, that's where the harm reductionist jumps right in. And that person then has 100% support of everybody in that center. We're going to get behind you and we're going to help you to harm yourself less. Now that could mean food, could mean housing, it could mean clothing, it could mean residential treatment, it could mean medication for opioid use disorder, it could mean over time a lot of things, but we'll never know unless we give them a place that's unconditionally safe, where they can get over chaotic drug use, develop a relationship, and begin to want to harm themselves less. That's what this is about. Make no mistake about it. Make no mistake about it. This is a long-term effort. We've come a long way in the wrong direction, and now we have to go a long way in the right direction. But when you think about it, at least we have that as an option. It's not like we have no control, we have no say-so. We can continue to let this problem kind of exponentially develop, or we can step in now and do all we can about it. And, you know, we can do anything, you know. I mean, our culture is incredible. When we put our mind to it, we can do anything.
Sorry, I just wanted to add two things really quickly. I just want to say, sometimes you're also, I know that I'm not always the best advocate as much as I try. Sometimes people just don't want to listen to a younger woman speak about this topic. So some things I also like to do is refer them to other advocates. This had tripartisan support in our legislature, and there are law enforcement officers, there are tons of lawyers, there are tons of advocates, there are tons of people who are family members of someone who has passed from an overdose, who are in support of this. So maybe if you're not the right messenger, find another messenger. That's kind of what I like to do if my message isn't being heard. I also saw another hand up, and I just wanted to make sure that was, yeah.
Did that answer your question? Yeah. Okay.
Hi, my name's Carol. I really support what you're doing, and I hope this comes to pass as quickly as possible. Is there a time frame when these places are open? Is it open just like from 9 to 5, or is it open 24/7? How much is it open?
Yeah, so from what I remember from the Vermont Department of Health, there's no time frame set out yet. That being said, I know the Overdose Prevention Center in New York City is open from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. I think it's daily. It might be a little bit different on the weekends. And I assume we will be moving forward with a similar model, but that is information I can try to get to you. It might not be available yet as well, but I will also let folks know.
Yeah, there's always, cost effectiveness and all this kind of thing, but the idea would be for it to be open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And I recently spoke with one of the directors down at On Point in New York City, and it's very, very sad that the bulk of deaths that are occurring in New York City are occurring when the Overdose Prevention Center is closed. So there's a correlation between people dying and not having access to an overdose prevention center. Right now, there's no access. Someday there'll be some, and hopefully, moving into the future, there'll be more. But the best would be to have it opened 24/7. Oh, and the other thing that saved lives, you don't hear people talking about this, but the other thing that saves lives, it's not only in the overdose prevention center that lives are being saved. When people learn how to take drugs safely and stably without chaos, that's a portable skill where they can then take drugs in other settings and be less likely to die. So overdose prevention centers save lives both at the center and outside the center.
I have a question, since no one else is asking. So you mentioned that you had been down to the center in New York City. Do you know if there is plans to continue working with the other centers in the United States and New York and Rhode Island, now and through the process after it opens?
Oh yeah. In fact, I can't even say enough about it. It's been a long, hard uphill fight. The advocates and the activists and people, the harm reductionists and sympathetic people in the city council and the legislature. It's been a long uphill fight. But some of the most important, indispensable support came from Kaylin C., who is the director down at On Point. She was testified at the legislature. She was at a city council. She, her and this Brandon Marshall, who's one of the chief researchers. Without them, and these people, I managed to get in touch with them a couple of years ago, and I can honestly tell you that they have never said no to me. Every time I have asked them to come in and testify, it was yes, just tell us when. They never once asked for any compensation. And you know why? Because when you care, you care. They care. It's as simple as that. They're high-level, nationally known experts. But what makes them special is that they care. And they were here every time we needed them. Without them, we wouldn't be where we are today. And yes, we will continue to collaborate, commiserate, learn, and do everything we can to be like them, because they've been successful in this. They are the real leaders.
I'm very glad to hear that. Thank you.
Hi. I just have a question. It kind of goes back to one that was asked before. How does it work if, let's say, for example, a dealer decides to set up very close to where the actual prevention center is located? What measures does the center take to mitigate that? work with, you know, security and, you know, how does that work?
Yeah, so we anticipate, and it's within H72 that law enforcement will be involved in this process. So there will be law enforcement in collaboration in the area. So folks, that hopefully will not be a result of this work, especially if we're able to collaborate really well with them. That's our goal in this, and that's what the bill says. Does that answer your question?
That's another common fear. That, okay, you're going to have people with addiction, you know, gravitating toward the overdose prevention center. So a drug dealer who, you know, wants potential clients, you know, or customers might be near the center. Yeah, we hear that a lot. It's not the case. The studies show that there's no more crime in areas around overdose prevention centers than there was before the overdose prevention center, and in many cases there's a decrease in crime. We also have, and we're going to have a delicate relationship with the Burlington Police Department. And Bella and I were both at a seminar today, a national seminar, where people from New York on point spoke. And what they said was the police in New York are incredibly supportive of On Point because it has removed so much work from their police caseload and freed them up to do other things. That police in New York have cards that they'll give people with addiction, telling them about the Overdose Prevention Center. They will even transport them to the Overdose Prevention Center. So we have a lot of work to do, network building with the Burlington Police, but also, we also want them to protect our clients, and that means keeping predators away from them. So it'll be kind of a complex relationship, but that's a fear that we hear often.
Thank you. I think we have time for probably 2 or 3 more questions.
So I have a question that is, I'm not sure of the timeline of opening the center, but as it nears and as information gets out, hopefully the majority of people are very supportive, as I am, but there will be probably some vocal opponents. And I'm wondering what strategies you and also we could use to get the word out and combat any, rebut any misinformation and get the right information out.
Yeah. Absolutely. That's a great question. And so to kind of tackle that, this is how we're starting that work. We're doing it right now in helping the public just learn more about the Overdose Prevention Center and become more aware of the resources that are available. It's not in this slide. In the next slide, you can learn a lot more from overdose prevention centers at these websites specifically, and I'll leave that up at the end for a little bit longer. But then if you go back, there's tons of different ways that you can help out, and one of them is to speak up at city council meetings. I'm looking at our councilors over there. And right in Front Porch Forum, there's actually a lot of public opinion about this in Front Porch Forum and in 7 days. Pretty much every week, there is an article that is about substance use or overdose, and people write opinions in those spaces, and a lot of those opinions that I have been reading over the last 6 months have been really hostile. So providing a more fact-based, evidence-based, empathetic response in those spaces. And then I will also just say attending public safety meetings that some of our counselors that Milo is on, I'm pointing, so I see her over there, is another way that you can get your voice and you can get your word out. Did you want to add anything else to that? The first one?
Yeah, if you look at this slide here, do you see that OPC info? OPC info? That site, if you go to that site, the other sites are really good, but OPC info is extremely user-friendly. It's fun to go to. There's all kinds of information there, specifically about overdose prevention centers. And that point about vocal opposition is well taken. There will be a lot of vocal opposition. The best you can do is educate yourselves. Educate yourselves. We can provide you with this PowerPoint. You can go to these sites and review them. These sites will also have links to other literature. I'm always reading about this stuff. You can never really know too much. And that way, when you're in a conversation with one of your neighbors who's vocally, opposed, you can have a sensible conversation with them. I for one, and Bella knows, my strategy going forward is I am no longer trying to change anyone's mind. No, I am seeking people like you who don't really need your mind changed that much. People who have compassion in their heart, who care deeply about their brothers and sisters and are not going to turn their back on them. I'm all about finding you. There's a lot of you out here, and you're an untapped resource, believe me. If we can organize, we can do this, and we'll have an overdose prevention center in Burlington.
And there's two specific ways to organize with Decriminalize Vermont. You can join the coalition as a member and as an individual member, and what that will do is provide you with newsletters if you want them, and then the ability to attend monthly meetings, but also we'll just add your name to a list of people who are endorsing overdose prevention centers and the work that we do at Decriminalize Vermont. That shows your neighbors, if this ever comes out and people are curious, you can say, look at all these folks, look at this organization. The Peace and Justice Center is a member of our coalition. Oh, I support the Peace and Justice Center. Then maybe this is something that I'm interested in, I want to learn more about. We really hope to do a lot more work to build our coalition moving forward. So those are just two ways that you can get engaged. But thank you for that question, really important.
And we'll make
there's
sure.
also the Vermont Interfaith Action is Bella and I will be doing a number of presentations for them. So we're kind of tapping on the public. We're trying to get an organized force ready to stand up and make sure this happens for our fellow Vermonters. Remember, we're talking about our families. We're talking about our children. We're talking about our neighbors. We cannot turn our backs on them.
Thank you. And I was just going to say, from the NPA side of things, we'll make sure to post the slideshow on our website. We'll have all the information in our notes as well, so you can all access this afterwards and access the great resources. Thank you. Any other questions? Yes.
What do you think about it's kind of maybe enabling people, and how about if the drug is illegal, then you're kind of contradicting yourself, and it also might bring a lot of traffic to people that don't have the drug, and they're just looking for other people around there to get them high.
Yeah, I can touch on those. So all of the research and the evidence that first I just want to say, that's a really, that's a common response or a common question that we get. So I really appreciate you asking that. And it's definitely a concern as well. I mean, a lot of these substances can be incredibly addictive and incredibly harmful and can harm a lot of people. So we're really cognizant of that fact, and we're really aware of that. So I just want to say thank you for asking that. And then the second piece of that is just that's something that I've been curious about as well. So we've been doing a lot of research at the Decriminalize Vermont Coalition, looking at other overdose prevention centers across the world, across 35 years. And we have not seen, surprisingly, we haven't seen an increase in people going to these spaces and saying, oh, well, this overdose prevention center is around. Let me just try to use it as much as possible and get into it, even if I wasn't into using substances before. That's not what we've been seeing, surprisingly. We've been seeing folks in the community who are using substances have a space like they didn't have before to use in a safe way and to have their drugs tested so that they're not as harmful to them, and they have the supplies that they need so that they don't contract infection too as well, because that can be a part of it as well. And then the second part of your question, which I'm spacing on, do you remember the second half of the question?
What was the second part of your question?
What was the second half of that question?
You're enabling people
Mm-hmm.
and just contradicting yourself. Drugs illegal, and I think people that are already committing illegal crimes anyway, I don't think they're going to do it the nice way. They're just going to have their own rules.
Yeah. So I guess. Did you want to add? Do you want to add?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
thank you.
I can talk to that. The enabling part, a little bit. The gentleman who works with unsheltered people alluded to it. He said when he reaches out and talks to people on the street that they don't want to be there and they don't want to be doing that. You know, I mean, if you talk to a couple of people and get to know a couple of people that are waking up in the rain and in withdrawal and, you know, have to find somewhere to take drugs like a public restroom, you're going to find out that they're not very happy and that they are suffering. And I was a therapist for 30 years. I spent 30 years listening. Besides that, I was a person with addiction for 20 years. I've seen this from many, many perspectives. The majority of the people we're talking about, now you have to understand the population we're talking about. Tonight we're talking about the population in downtown Burlington that are dying at a rate of 1 every 2 weeks from drug overdose. Most of them unsheltered, people with severe addiction. Over 90% of them, I would say, have what we call early adverse experiences, early childhood adversity. They have been set up to be vulnerable to addiction. 100% of them have suffered the twin gauntlets of the war on drugs and stigma, some of them for decades. They've been disenfranchised. They've been seen through punitive lenses. They've been looked down on. They're difficult to engage. We're not enabling them. We're saving their lives. Do you know that in 2023 in America, 1 person died every 4.8 minutes from drug addiction? So over 30 World Trade Centers in 1 year. We're not enabling them. We're helping them to stay alive while we can offer them health-promoting services. And that's just the way it is. And yeah, taking drugs is illegal, but you know what? We have a state that's saturated with stores that are selling THC, and that's illegal. So, you know, we need to save lives, and that, I'll shut up now, but we really do. We need to not meet these people where they are, to wait for them to somehow hit this like mythical bottom so they're gonna be motivated to get better. They die first today. And that's because they're preyed upon by multinational crime organizations that are selling them fatal drugs, fentanyl, laced with xylazine, multinational corporations that couldn't care less whether they live or die. This population needs to be not enabled, they need to be protected.
Yeah, I will also just say the second part of that is just, I've said this before, but in H72, in the Overdose Prevention Center in Burlington, people who are using substances and of those who are supporting those using substances, woo, thunder, will have qualified immunity. So this will not be illegal in this space to have drugs and obtain drugs. But that's a really great question to ask for sure.
Well, you know, we have to stop now, but let me answer that question. They don't care if they live or die. The human brain has a function when it's operating healthily. It's called the self-care function, preservation of self, right next to preservation of the species. When a person has a brain that's been under the influence of addiction, it no longer functions in a healthy way. So you engage in behaviors that are not safe, and that can be life-threatening. And that behavior can be interpreted as you don't care whether you live or die, but that's not the case. They care whether they live or die. They just are incapable of behaving like they care because they're driven by addiction, and addiction is self-destructive by nature.
Yeah, and I also just say that I grabbed the statistic earlier today, which was really baffling to me, is that 95% of the people who have overdosed in Vermont overdosed accidentally, and then 4% is undetermined, and then only 1% is purposefully or through suicide. So the statistics in that, just I can't make that jump to say that folks don't want to be in that space just from that data that don't want to be in that space and are using substances to end their lives. That's just not what our data is saying.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, so that's one of the services that will be provided at the Overdose Prevention Center is Narcan and oxygen.
What's that?
Yeah, and that's what the Overdose Prevention Center
You know,
is.
Vermont was the first state in America to, support widespread use of Narcan. We have Good Samaritan laws where, Good Samaritan laws, where if you're around someone who overdoses, you can call the police and you're not going to get prosecuted. There won't be any, there's no fear of getting in trouble. Vermont has been very, very like a leader in that. Narcan is one of the major reverser of overdose deaths. I can't even imagine how many people would die if we didn't have Narcan. So good point about Narcan.
All right. Yes, thank you so much, Bella and Ed. And thank you, everyone, for great questions. This was a really great presentation, and like I said, we will provide all the resources and contact information, if that's okay, in our notes. So if anyone didn't get a chance to ask their question, please reach out, or you can also reach out to us, and we'll put you in touch with Ed and Bella. All right. So our next agenda item is we're totally switching gears. So we are going to host a quick vote on a new steering committee member. So I'm really excited to introduce Mark, who is interested in joining the Ward 2 steering committee. And just as we don't do a ton of votes, so I'm going to do a quick disclaimer. You can only vote if you are a Ward 2 member. So with that, I will allow Mark to give a few quick words, and then we'll do a vote.
Hello, my name is Mark Standard. I use he, him pronouns. I live on the corner of Decatur Street and North Winooski, across from Taco Gordo. I moved to the the old North End, in June. Started coming to these dinners 3 months ago. Came to the last month's meeting. Eager to get involved in my community. And provide, a place where people can support one another and offer ideas and start conversations with each other. So
Perfect. Thanks, Mark. I guess, does anyone have any questions? Now I'm really putting you on the spot. Okay, awesome. So the way we'll do this, Mark, if you can, if you want to leave or just turn around, whatever you feel comfortable with. This is not like the greatest for that. But what we'll do is just once Mark steps out, we'll do a raise of hands in favor, opposed, and abstaining. So as a reminder, Ward 2 residents. So all those in favor of Mark joining the steering committee for Ward 2? Can someone hold that? All right, all those opposed? Any abstentions? Amazing. All right, welcome, Mark. Thank you, everyone. All right, so now moving on to our next agenda item, we have our state legislators here to do a listening session ahead of the new biennium. So if y'all want to come up front, we have 2 mics. So we'll do a quick introduction, and then we have plenty of time for questions.
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name's Abby Duke. I am the rep for Chittenden 17, which is the western side of Ward 2, so from the west side of Park Street to the lake.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jill Krowinski, and I represent Chittenden 16, which is the Old North End in downtown, along with Kate.
Hi, folks. I'm Kate Logan. I represent the Chittenden 16 district with Jill. That, as she said, is the central Old North End, downtown, and then a little part of Pine Maple.
Hello, my name is Troy Hedrick. I represent the Chittenden 15 district, was just a wee little sliver of Ward 2. If you live between North Street and Loomis Street and then east of North Union, there's like 3 or 4 blocks there that are in the Chittenden 15 district. So, and I know Brian was here. I don't know where he went. Brian Chena also, there he is, serves the Chittenden 15 district as well.
Thank you, Charlie.
Hi, I'm Brian Sheena. I am a state representative for Chittenden 15, which is part of the Old North End and most, if not all, of the East District. And I'm going into my 5th term. Is that what we call them? My 5th term, so my 9th year. Is that I like gardening, music, huskies, huskies, Rottweilers.
We can either jump right into questions, or if you all want to give like a quick overview of what you're kind of thinking of going into next year.
Give us a boundary on that.
Okay, yes. I keep leaving my phone behind as I... Okay, so let's do... like, yeah, 2 minutes. Yeah, so 7:50, so in 10 minutes. So yeah, 2 minutes each. I can also set...
I'm happy to yield part of my time back for questions. Hi, everyone. So as you know, I'm your state representative, but I'm also the Speaker of the House. And I just have to say, in the previous presentation about overdose prevention sites, it was a pretty big, tough slog to get that across the finish line. And so it is so incredible to see you here talking about it. It's so special. And I actually worked on the bill to expand access to Narcan that first time, and it is so incredible to see how far we've come when it comes to just normalizing it and having it be part of our community and public places. So thank you for your work. So coming into this next legislative session, we have a lot of big, heavy priorities that we're going to have to be working on. So in my mind, obviously, making sure that our kids get the best education at a price we can afford is going to be critical. We have heard the feedback about increasing taxes, and also the feedback about just needing more supports for our kids at the same time and how we balance that. That's going to be a top priority this session. Also, we're going to be focused on healthcare. There are several different pieces of healthcare right now that are kind of coming to this critical juncture. We have a hospital system that is near crisis. the cost of health insurance keeps going up, and it's becoming unaffordable. And the last thing we want are people that decide not to have insurance because they can't afford it. We want to make sure everyone gets the care they need when they need it. And then we'll also be continuing our work on housing. We've made a lot of progress over the last several years, making it easier to build in places that we want more growth, and also increasing access to affordable housing, but we need to do more. Our work is not done, so we're going to prioritize that as well. We did a lot of work last legislative session on public safety. We're going to be looking to make sure that the investments we made and the laws that we pass are working, and that we're seeing that backlog and the courts go down. And the governor just finally appointed 3 judges that we had put in our budget, so that's good to see that movement. And then finally, just making sure that we're doing what we can around flood recovery and resiliency. I was at the Intervale today. I was glad to see that it hadn't flooded again. I know, Hillary. So anyway, excited to hear your questions, and I'll pass it on to Kate.
Yeah, I think we're all going to say pretty similar things because I feel like voters have spoken pretty clearly about what our priorities need to be. So revenue and cost management, making sure we have great health care and education, but can afford to live in Vermont. Housing, I was really happy to be on the Environment and Energy Committee last year and got to work on Act 250 and municipal zoning reform, and looking forward to continuing that work, especially on how to incentivize the development of more affordable housing. What we did is working all across the state, and so we hope to see that continue to work and relieve the burden of low vacancy and the inability of middle-income families to buy homes in Vermont. I'm also speaker, by the way. One of the things that I care about working on is in response to the Trump presidency, we expect there to be a serious erosion of workers' rights in the United States, and so yeah, we can take measures at the state level to protect working Vermonters, to ensure that they have the basic and hard-earned rights that we've enjoyed for a really long time, and possibly expand those rights to more workers, like farm laborers, for example. And then creating pathways to community-owned renewable energy generation. That was something I started working on last session, and I would like to continue to work on that in the next session.
Thank you, Kate. Again, my name is Troy Hedrick. For the past 2 years, I've served on the House Corrections and Institutions Committee. So I do have a small clump of corrections reform legislation that I'm more than happy to talk in specifics for anybody who would like that. I do think if we're talking about the housing crisis specific to Burlington, we have to talk about the impact that UVM has on the housing market. So I'm going to be reintroducing a bill that I tried last time that tries to put some guardrails around that. I too am very concerned about the federal administration that's incoming and the impact that that is likely to have on migrant and immigrant population. So working with Migrant Justice to require legislative approval for our governor to, before he enters into any agreements for supporting federal, assisting federal border patrol and ICE. In addition to that, the impact that is likely to be had on significant gains that we've made with regard to LGBTQ+ population and their protections and gender-affirming care. There's still some things we can do to bolster that and protect that population as well.
So one of the first things that the Trump administration is threatening to do is called empowerment. And they want to hold back federal funds and then pass decisions through Congress to cut the budget, so to cut money for the social safety net. They basically want to dismantle the New Deal and the efforts of JFK and Johnson. And in the face of that, I think the best we can do is try to find ways to become self-sufficient. It will help us in the long term regardless of what happens. And we're in this process of reimagining Vermont with the regional planning commissions creating new land use maps and about to start a public engagement process. So as we bring people together to imagine this future, it's an opportunity to identify local strengths, challenges, and invest money locally in building sustainable infrastructure that can not only weather Trump, but climate change and other possible disasters coming our way. So I'm going to be advocating for housing development that integrates local energy production, agricultural production, waste management into the facilities. It's about designing neighborhoods so that we, designing neighborhoods so that we can take care of people better regardless of what happens federally. So I could say more about these ideas, but because it is complicated. I do think we should fund it by asking those with the most to pay a little extra. In the 90s, the state of Vermont got out of a crisis by a Republican governor, a Democrat-led Republican House, and a Democrat-led Senate made a compromise, created an income tax surcharge on the wealthiest, and used that to get us out of debt. I think we should use a similar model, and I have ideas about how to spend it wisely to increase home ownership and build public housing for people who may not be able to own their own homes for various reasons. I also would like to work on, there's a lot of stuff, so I don't want to start trying to go down this road because time is up. So people can ask questions about things and you can get more details then.
So again, my name is Abby Duke, and I was appointed with a week to go in the session last year, so I'm the newest member and was elected for the first time last month. So I've been spending the last month trying to learn how to be a good legislator and how to be effective, and I expect, Speaker, to be on the Economic Development Committee. And so I've been putting extra work into learning those issues and going to meetings and meeting key players, and I think there's a strong direction that the most important driver of economic development right now is housing. Housing throughout the state and using financing mechanisms and ways to fund infrastructure and build more housing of all kinds, especially affordable housing, and use smart land use planning in town centers, transportation policy, energy policy, some of Brian's ideas that he's talking about. But housing is a lever that will bring economic prosperity. It will help in many, many issues that we're facing, is if we have more housing in town centers across the state. All right. So now
time for questions.
Questions or ideas,
Yes.
right? Things that
Yeah.
feedback.
Thanks. Hello, everyone. Ooh, I'm Christina Erickson, Ward 2 resident on Ward Street. And my day job is Executive Director of Local Motion. And so we work a lot with your colleagues in the transportation committees, and none of you are on that. So this is perfect, because related to much of the housing is what can we do to integrate making those housing developments in town centers more walkable and bikeable, and how can we bring up that topic outside of the transportation committees?
Who wants to start? Who wants to start that?
Or I can jump in.
Okay.
So that is part of the planning process, actually, that we have required through the Act 250 reform bill that we passed last year. There will be a multi-year regional planning process that is going to be creating land use maps, and one of the requirements of proper planning around residential areas is public transit and smart growth development principles just generally.
Oh, is it? Oh. Sorry. I think you all heard that. Okay. I know that this is a big priority for AARP. We recently met with them, and that is a conversation that will happen in transportation, but also when we go through the appropriations process as well, making sure we're making investments in that.
Hello? Okay, hi. My name's Kason. I'm on the steering committee, but I'm also the Director of Operations for the Peace and Justice Center here in town. And I just have sort of an anecdote that, like, to talk about. The other day, I got a call, which is a kind of a weird call for the Peace and Justice Center to receive, but somebody from Texas was calling and was saying, "Hi, I'm a person of color, and I have a trans kid, and I really, really need to get out of Texas." And they were like, is there any way that I can move to Vermont, and is there a safe place that I can go there? And I was like happy to tell them that, like, yeah, Vermont will be a safer place for your kid, but housing is scarce here, and it's really hard to move here. So I was just wanted to add that as, like, there are a lot of people who I think will want to move to Vermont, and Vermont is a place that I think can be a safe harbor for people. At least I like to hope it can be, or like to think it can be. So just wanted to add that as, like, something, as you're considering these housing opportunities, like, it really is, I think it's going to be key in the next little bit.
Thank you. I don't want to alarm people, but I feel like we need to be truthful and realistic about what's possible. I've consulted with our legislative lawyers about, what happens if the sort of Republican-dominated Senate, House, and Supreme Court rapidly, like, if laws rapidly pass that erode rights and the Supreme Court upholds them. And I said, what would happen if the federal government made it illegal to provide gender-affirming care? Vermont has SHIELD laws, and they did tell me that federal law trumps state law, and that even though Vermont may be safer in terms of how we take care of each other, I'm a healthcare provider, and about a third of my clients are transgender youth, that I would be a criminal if they did that. And so me and my clients are already talking about, well, you'll be cured of gender dysphoria and you'll just have depression, But that's mental health. But what's going to happen to people who have changed their bodies, who rely on these medications? It's really frightening, and I just want to say, like, it's a safer place because we'll take care of them in a way they won't be taken care of there. But we can't give up the fight for the rights, because we're going to have to defend them. I mean, people need to know that now and be ready for it.
And I will say that there's a collection, they're calling themselves the Vermont, a coalition of Vermont queer legal professionals. And I haven't talked with my caucus about this yet, but we've been putting together a bunch of bills that will seek to bolster, like I said, those, including stockpiling of gender-affirming medication. So I don't want to discount, because you're absolutely accurate, but we're going to do everything we absolutely can to bolster that shield and the safety net.
We're all going to have to.
Yeah, and if you have any interest in becoming a housing developer, I highly recommend that you jump in right now. We need lots of housing. We need lots of housing developers. There really is a backlog. There are resources available to build housing, and we lack the number of housing developers we need in the state to meet the demand with all of the resources that we've been pouring into housing development. So if you're looking for a career shift right now, be a good time.
Well, Abby and I are over here like, yeah, and this tags in workforce development and the fact that we don't have enough plumbers and electricians. And so a little plug for our state college system. We have some really great programs.
So the two, I forget everyone's name except for Brian. So Brian and whoever's sitting next to Brian were talking about supporting trans people who are going to be dependent on some gender-affirming care, on maybe prescriptions. and then it switched to housing kind of abruptly. And I think that housing is very much on people's front, it's the front burner issue right now. It is being talked about everywhere. But I guess it was a little jarring for me to realize that federal law will trump, lovely word, trump state law. And the mother of a trans kid who's going to be going on T soon is going, that's terrifying. And so I think that should, I don't know, what can we do?
Again, I know it's very alarming and stressful and devastating to think that this is something that could happen. We did take, with our shield laws and other provisions, as many steps as we could to get us to this place. So we're not being reactive if something happens. There are different paths that, whatever happens was going to be challenged in court. So there are different steps that will happen if this starts to take place. We will be working with our legislative council to see if there are other things we can do to bolster it. But I think we kind of have our front line ready to go. And again, like I said, whatever gets passed it will be challenged and go to court. We will do everything that we can. I feel like all of us agree that we feel strongly about this, and we'll do whatever we can to help protect and do whatever other protections we need once we have a better sense of what it looks like and what strategies we need.
And then really quickly, just from other areas of law where similar things have happened, there is also precedent, and this could be where it shakes out in court, is that if states take a more protective stance in an area of law, then the state preempts federal. So it could end up that way, but that doesn't mean that we're not gonna have to, march on Washington, D.C. at some point in the next few years.
All right, I think we have time for, I see 3 hands, so we're gonna try and get the next 3 hands in the next few minutes.
I'll talk quickly. So just to jump back to development, I'm just wondering what you folks are doing or planning on doing when it comes to working with developers and making sure that inclusionary zoning and other inclusive practices are part of the work that you're doing.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead. So sorry I'm dominating this conversation. I'm very excited about this. We worked on, so one of the things that I made sure was in the Act 250 reform bill was a study on how to incentivize affordable housing development with all of these Act 250 changes that we're making. So that issue is coming back in this session, and the Department of Housing and Community Development and Vermont Housing Finance and Vermont Housing Conservation Board and the Land Access and Opportunity Board have written a report on our options for how to incentivize affordable housing development in the context of our new Act 250 laws. Like, for example, if a municipality wants a Tier 1A exemption from Act 250, it would require them to have inclusionary zoning, for example. So we're going to be considering those options.
So I serve on the Land Access and Opportunity Board, and we've already done some of this work, like connecting developers with disability rights advocates to start designing housing for people with disabilities. And there's a lot of other ideas. In a housing bill I'm working on, I'm proposing funding and technical support too. That's something the Land Access and Opportunity Board does, is we're gonna help people, walk them through the process of buying a home, maintaining homes, building developments. And as part of that, I'm proposing, and the board may support this, we have a meeting Monday where I'm going to present some ideas, but I'm proposing that we work really closely with different groups that may historically not developed and empower people, everyday people, to become developers. And one idea that tied into the workforce piece that I did want to throw out there is this idea of investing in building the community's competency to do it ourselves and to help each other. So creating regional tool banks where there's construction machinery that you can book or rent, and having classes and mentorships and apprenticeships so that we can build like core of volunteers across the state to help, like barn raising. Like, my house needs work, who can help me fix my roof? And then you log that time, and then other people like labor banks, tool banks, skill sharing, et cetera. So I'm happy to talk in detail more about it later, but I think we have to think out of the box. It can't just be for-profit developers. We need to help them, and that's an important piece, but we need to figure out how to empower the people to actually fix stuff ourselves, recycle stuff, and build the community skills, because we don't know what the future holds. So.
Thanks, guys. Our bus system is facing a fiscal cliff, and it needs a fundamentally different way of financing. And so, how are we going to do that?
Well, I don't have the answer and solution right in front of me, but I can guarantee you that that will be on the agenda for our House Transportation Committee, and I'm going to be asking all of you to be giving feedback and thoughts as the committee takes this up, because it is an important issue, and we have a lot of budgetary constraints, and it's going to be hard. So that's why it's going to be important for you to be sharing your stories and why it's so critical for this community and communities across the state. Yeah. Happy to make that happen.
I have a question here. Besides housing, how are you planning to address the state's aging crisis? There's a lack of third spaces. Our education system is dismal right now, and with the voucher program, that lack of community is really shining in a lot of different communities. So I really would like to hear a plan to address that.
So I'm going to start, but then I'll pass it on. I mean, I think what you're talking about is kind of a hollowing out of a lot of our rural communities, right? So we have winners in Vermont, and we have some towns that are losers. Okay, I'm not going to say it. I shouldn't have said that word. There's some towns that are struggling, right? They've lost, the demographics are aging. They have fewer students, so their schools have fewer students in them. So a couple of things I will say. One is there's going to be a huge effort focused on both the education system and the education financing system. And also a really important piece of that is for our rural communities is not taking away their total town identity, right? Like, so there's community schools, community elementary schools. How are they able to support them? I know there's some communities that there's conversations about, if there's an elementary school that is only at half capacity, what other kind of third space could that school be if it's being consolidated with another school? So my understanding is that when there's talk about the education system, everybody understands every community is different, and every community has somewhat different needs, and so it's going to be a big, long conversation. And then I will get back to housing, and I do think housing is at the crux of our demographic challenges and the crux of a lot of the economic problems in a lot of these small communities around the state. If there's nowhere to live, affordably, people are going to move to Williston, they're going to move to Burlington, right? So if we as a state are able to invest in these town centers across the state and help them be able to build more housing so people can live there, then all of a sudden their ground list goes up, they have more resources for their schools. Our healthcare system is strengthened because there's more people paying into it, all those things. So I am a firm believer that we need more people. We need, people to move to Vermont. We need people of working age to move to Vermont, to work, especially in the trades, and to work in, we have businesses that are trying to grow, but can't grow because they can't fill the positions because the people who want to move here to work those jobs can't find anywhere to live. So I do think housing is at the crux, but it's not just any old housing. It's housing in town centers distributed around the state. So I think there's a bunch of committees working on all those things. But my understanding is it seems to be a lot of consensus that this is something that that broad vision is what people are going to be working towards.
Sorry, I know we're at time, but I just want to share, there are organizations out there like Cathedral Square that are doing really great work around housing for seniors, and they are actually just expanding and about to open a really great new housing facility up in Highgate. And so for folks who want to stay like in their communities and don't want to leave, and they want to move out of their home, they're ready to leave, but they want to be in a place where there's community, and they're not like leaving to come to Williston or Burlington. And I'm really excited about that, to see that we're seeing expansions outside in more rural areas, and with facilities that have community events planned at them, community rooms, and spaces for people to have meals together. And I think that's really important. So it's slow, but we are seeing some really great progress out there.
And just to add on to that, like every committee has a role to play pretty much in addressing this, but I also agree that it is primarily a housing challenge right now, especially for older Vermonters who might live in a 4-bedroom house. There's no place to downsize to. If you sell your house, you might make a lot of money on your house right now, but you can't buy a smaller place that's affordable in Vermont. So some of one committee, like my committee, for example, did statewide zoning reform, where anywhere that's zoned single family can now be zoned for up to a 4-plex if there's water and sewer in the area. So creating greater housing density across the state, I think is going to encourage, incentivize developers, and then granting an Act 250 exemption, making the permitting process easier, I think is going to incentivize developers to build more dense housing that is the kind of housing that older Vermonters could downsize to, which will also grow our grand list, make it possible for people to move into Vermont. And we already know that we're having a net in-migration to the state right now. So people want to move here. People want to move from their big house to a smaller house. We just need more housing options, and we're just going as fast as we can.
So 2 quick ideas. One, when I studied social work in Finland, it was a little town, and after we got out of the bars at 3 a.m., I went back to this apartment with some young people, and I was like, this is a nice place, how much does it cost? And they said, it's public housing. In Finland, when you turn 18, you're eligible to live in this public housing till you're 26. While you're here, your rent changes depending on your income, and you're encouraged to save up money, and most people buy a home when they get out at age 26. Yet here in Vermont, when kids are in DCF custody, they end up homeless at 18 a lot of the time when they can't go back to their families. So at the very least, we should be providing this for them, but what if we did it for all young people? Maybe it would keep people here and attract young people here. They could save up money and then invest here. Second idea, we bring the Olympics to Vermont in 12 years or 20 years. We plan this boom with in mind thinking about this. We beef up our recreational facilities. We make Vermont a destination to train, to have events. The new model of planning the Olympics is different. Look it up. It's not how it used to be. It's all about sustainability and building community assets. If we did it right, we could have the Olympics here in 12 years and show the world this is how humans learned to live in the 21st century and overcame all these challenges.
We're going to end on that because I can. Thank you, representatives. And if you have a question for your representative that you didn't get a chance to ask, their emails are always included in our agenda, so please reach out to them. So now, before we go to our last agenda item, I do just want to quickly say, unfortunately, our school commissioners weren't able to join us today. They wanted to come to talk about the budget, which I know is top of mind, or close to top of mind for a lot of people. There will be a presentation on that, likely in our January meeting. But other than that, I will pass the mics on to our city councilors, Grant and Bergman. Jingo.
Hello. There's so much going on, I'm a little bit overwhelmed. So I'm going to actually reference something going on in Ward 3 because I know that there are people who watch both NPAs We continue to have issues in the city with regards to apartments or houses being locations where there are a lot of drug trafficking occurring and drug sales occurring. So we always recommend that people email your city councilor just to make sure that it is on our radar, and people can come to the city council meetings, public forum, or you can Zoom into those meetings if you want to talk about experiences that you're encountering. Our next Public Safety Committee meeting is next Thursday, the 19th. People can speak at the public forums there, and also speak at your NPAs. On the Public Safety Committee meeting for the 19th, I am going to try and get use it as an opportunity for people to discuss the situation going on at Grant and Union, which is affecting the downtown area. It just seems like more behavior has shifted again. And that's caused some problems on Clark Street, and that's caused some problems on Elmwood Avenue, Peru, and some other places. We're also going to be have our first conversation about the resolution. Hello, okay, the resolution that was passed to look at a public safety hub. And this will be the first time the Public Safety Committee is talking about it. When the resolution was passed, I made it clear that as the chair of the Public Safety Committee, my first priority was something that was already a priority, which was to make sure that access to the police station for the public was taken care of. We had the situation where the staffing issues have affected who can come out and assist people in the public, and that can also be lawyers who are trying to see their clients. We had the issue of the fire within the police station. So I'm trying to get an update on the repairs. The funds were all allocated for that, and I know that they did RFPs. I believe the repairs have started, but we'll have a firm update on that. We approved money for a receptionist position, so we'll try and find out if there have been any applications for that. And hey, if you need a job, the city is hiring, so just want to give a special shout out to that as well. I'm in the middle of deep diving the BPOA internal survey. So recently, Vermont Digger had an article where they did a FOIA request, Freedom of Information Act request to see the survey. I hadn't seen it, so I asked our city attorney's office, I'm like, hey, I want a copy of what you sent to Vermont Digger. So there's a lot of interesting stuff in there. A lot. So I'm trying to, pass it on to one of our staff members who's awesome. And I was just like, I'd like to have these comments sorted. I want to look at external issues. I want to look at internal issues, because that was a big thing about this survey. It talked about some pretty concerning internal issues. And I think this is something that can be used as a blueprint as we start the process of finding a new chief. A couple of quick things about the presentation on OPCs, overdose prevention centers. One of the things that we have been seeing and has been discussed is the issue of public urination and defecation. And the idea of holding people accountable for that. This has been really hard for me, because when we think about the human condition is such that we must excrete waste. That's not an option. That's not an option. So what's happening here is something very different. So as a reminder, we have an unprecedented number of people living on the streets in Burlington. It's 350. That's hundreds of people. We have never had numbers this high before. This does not count people who are couch surfing. This does not count people who are actually in shelters. These are people sleeping on the street, and we have extremely limited public bathrooms, like next to nothing, and certainly not anything overnight. So when we start to say, well, we already have certain ordinances, but we're going to target an ordinance and we're going to throw fines in, I just find this insane. It to me, people say the word lie is too strong. I believe it is misleading people to say you're going to do these new ordinances and you're going to throw these fines in and that's going to fix the problem. And then people are like, oh, the city council voted on this. It's misleading people. The truth matters. So one of the things about an overdose prevention center is it's going to have bathrooms. It's going to have bathrooms, and it's going to have bathrooms if we can get the hours going into the late evening. It's going to have bathrooms, public bathrooms that are available later than is available right now. So that's just very important to me. I also want to address the idea of if this would enable people or cause people to start to use who don't use. Especially there's a lot of fear-based concerns around our kids. Our kids are already dealing with their parents being addicted and causing them to lose custody. Our kids are dealing with parents who have lost their lives to this crisis. Our kids are dealing with being recruited by drug dealers. Our kids are dealing with seeing people shooting up. Our kids are dealing with having to walk around all kinds of litter associated with syringe and other drug paraphernalia. That is the reality of what is happening to our kids right now. We don't need to make anything up. We need to address what is actually happening. So not fear-based decisions, but fact-based, data-driven solutions. And an overdose prevention center is that. And if a kid, a teenager, a kid walked in PC and said, you know, I'm interested in trying something, that's the place we'd actually want them to be, in a place full of people trained in harm reduction. So that's what I'd like people to think about. And with regards to working with local law enforcement and the fire department, I really have high hopes for that. And I think also with a new chief at the police department, one of the questions I know I'm going to be asking is just making sure that we have someone that will be willing to work with it. In these areas that have OPCs, it has been shown to save a lot of money. It reduces the need for the police department. It reduces the need for the fire department and emergency medical services. That is going to save us a lot of money. It'll cost money to get it up and running, but it's going to end up saving us a lot of money. So I definitely want people to think about that. What else do we do? Continuing needing to have a plan for recruitment and retention, still not seeing it, super important. And I would also like to say around social media, because I still keep getting a lot of questions about that. Depending on what generation one is in, social media may or may not be important to you, but when we talk about recruitment and when we talk about retention and we talk about community engagement, social media and just online, using online digital advertising is super important when it comes to of police officers. The generation that we're looking to recruit, they get all their information online. No one is like looking at a newspaper, right? Remember the days, some of us, depending on your age, we were interested in moving to a city, we would call that newspaper and say, hey, can you give me a mail subscription for a little bit? So we could read about that community and see what jobs are offered. That doesn't exist anymore. Everything is online. So not having an adequate online presence, given everything that's happened and what our needs are, is super, super important. So I just need people not necessarily to look at it from a personal standpoint, but from what is required by today's standards and our needs for today. And I will leave it there and pass it to my dear friend.
Thank you, sis. I'm really tired, and I just have to say that this is a good training for what will be an ungodly long meeting on Monday night. And we continue to have these really long meetings, but there's obviously a lot of stuff that's going on. Mentioned bikes and pedestrians, and one of the things that we'll be dealing with Monday night is the Winooski Bridge. And I'm really pleased to have gotten the letter from Local Motion saying this is not really good enough, but given where we are, given what the whole process has been, it is something that should be advanced because it gives us the opportunity to do better in the future. I come to the Winooski Bridge reconstruction plan, and it's really about the 30% plan. It is not about the full plan, but once you sort of lock in, it becomes kind of hard to make fundamental changes in that. Only in the last 2 years, but this has been going on for quite some time. And when I started getting involved with it, I raised the questions about the roundabout, around reduction in lanes. It seems that the people's turning out to the city council, raising concerns about speed, about pedestrian safety, about bicycle safety, about access on both sides of the bridge, about Chase Mill, all of these questions that we have here have had an impact and will continue to have an impact. I've always, and I think I know most of you here, not everybody, but that I've always told you when I'm gonna vote in a certain way, whether you like it or not, just so that you know that it's coming. And I'm gonna support this plan that's coming in front of us on Monday night, even though I have spoken critically, because I believe that the combination of the facts on the ground and the impacts, if we don't support it, are significantly worse for all of the things that I care about. I mean, I try to bike to the Chase Mill. We're online, so I won't curse. It's crazy, right? And this will make that significantly better. It will encourage a lot more bikes and people walking to and from, and that is going to then put a lot more pressure on us to do things in a fundamentally different way. And that is one of the reasons why I raised to our legislators the idea about the bus system, because you got to get people here to where they want to go in lots of different ways effectively, and we are not doing that except with people's cars. So so that's going to be happening on Monday night. I don't know where it's going to go. Housing is something that we talked about. The state legislature made it harder for every municipality in Vermont to keep out emergency shelters. Whoa, you get a crisis, you got to have an emergency shelter, you get run into the NIMBYs, and there are no emergency shelters. Okay, legislature, let's take care of that. Well, not so fast, because you can do things like keep them out of certain districts entirely. So when we went to allow for, to change our zoning law to match the state definition of emergency shelters, we also tried, this was the planning commission, the planning department and the planning commission and the housing people in CEDO, to make sure that they were able to be cited in every district in the city. Whoa, you mean we should let them be out in the New North End? They should be in the South End too? Holy cow, you mean not just in the Old North End? I mean, we welcome them here, right? I'm not trying to say, hey, we got enough, right? Because I don't believe there are enough. But, you know, like, there are good reasons that having certain types of shelters out in the New North End that are lower key, that are more family oriented, would make a lot of sense, particularly if they're close to the bus line. Well, my Democratic colleagues from Ward 5, Joan Shannon, and Ward 6, Becca McKnight Brown, said no, that was not going to be what we want, and they struck it. They moved to strike it, that permission from the zoning ordinance, and the Democratic caucus, which is a majority, endorsed that, and that is coming up on Monday night. There's a public hearing. We're going to get housing advocates to say this is not the right thing to do, and to put forward and to suggest in the public hearing an amendment to that. I will work very hard, because I just saw that it was on the agenda. This is the beauty of being a city councilor. You get to see what's on the agenda for this coming Monday on Thursday night. And if you're tired, and if you just come back from taking care of grandkids or working a hard job, and you may not open your email on Thursday night, then you might not know until Friday. But now I know. So now I have more work to do to see if we can undo this very short-sighted, not in my backyard approach to taking care of ourselves. And I know we only, I speak to folks here, I like to sing with the choir. I like to speak to the choir. It's really empowering, but I'm glad that, Travis, that you're broadcasting there so that we can get this out, because it's really important to know that you cannot mouth out of one side of your mouth that you care about people and then do a lot of things that are going to undermine that. And this is a perfect example of that. And I got one more thing to talk about, and I got like three things. So I'm going to do two of them if we have the chance to do. Just two really briefly. Last NPA, Will Lambeck got up. He works for Migrant Justice, and he is in our ward, I believe. He lives in the neighborhood. Speaking about the change in the fair and impartial policing policy. And he said, well, how did that happen? You know, the city council, you know, there are hundreds, many hundreds of people who came to City Hall in 2020, and you passed a fair and impartial policing policy, which basically said that we were not going to be La Migra in Vermont. The Burlington police were not going to be ICE, right? And all of a sudden, we find out that our policy has changed. Well, the mayor didn't know about it. I didn't know about it. Milo didn't know about it. And like Travis says, he didn't know about it. And that's because the chief broke the city's own directives and adopted a policy without not even bringing it to the commission. I mean, I don't get it. So the reason I raise this is not just to say, yeah, the reason that we passed oversight is because of things like that, Chief Murad, but it's actually to say that we are going to be working on undoing that, what I think was an illegal action on the part of the chief to change the policy, breaking the policies on how we do this. It's just fundamentally wrong. There may be a political fight. We have a new administration that's going to be very aggressive, who's interested in deporting how many tens of millions of people, and so they will use everything they can to enlist everybody and squash everything that we do. But we can start at the right place with our own policy. So I'm looking to take care of that, and our caucus is looking to do that. And then the last thing, speaking of democracy, so Kate asked people about joining the apartheid-free campaign and passed around a sign-up. And that's because people petitioned to put it on the ballot again. And they got the number of people to sign it, the number of voters to sign it, and they submitted them just so that they were in there. Well, they did that like this week, I think. And Ben Travers, the president, who I generally get along with, although I can get along with almost all of them all the time, but has put it on the agenda for this coming Monday. No opportunity to have any time to talk to councilors who had opposed it before. No, the UVM is going to be out of session, and those folks are going to be gone, and a significant number of people in the city, particularly at UVM, care about this. So, I mean, I and others have asked that this be delayed because it does not have to be on the agenda tonight. It would be good for the organizers who would like more time to talk to our Democratic colleagues, you know, so that they can talk about the importance of democracy and why it would be something of a basic fundamental right to let the people decide this question. We'll see. I think this is, once again, something to just like use their power of the majority to ram, actually not to ram through, but to stop. Anybody who is who can come to public forum, the meeting starts at 5:30. If you would need to go via Zoom, doing it from your home, you have to sign up like at 4:30. So you have to sign up an hour ahead of when the time is, but the time certain is 6 o'clock this coming Monday for public forum. It would probably make a lot more sense to sign up at 4:30 or definitely not after 5. And I just, you know, for me, it's a fundamental piece of democracy to let people vote. And on a personal level, I have to say that genocide is being committed in my name from the river to the sea. And I am appalled and want a chance to just say no. And I want the democratic process to be able to do that. And that will be my position on Monday night. But, you know, democracy is such that people have different ideas. And so if you just want to encourage folks to come out and speak, particularly on that. Basta ya.
I just want to add a few things to that. So the last time that this was brought forth, it was very interesting because a young woman's comment literally went viral. And if you go back and you look at that particular meeting and you listen to all the discussion, it's probably one of the most viewed city council meetings ever because that comment went viral and thousands and thousands of people came to watch the meeting. They would watch that segment, but many people watched the meeting. It has a lot of comments, and I recommend people going back and looking at that. We should find that and post that, actually, while I'm thinking of it. One of our fellow councilors didn't know what the word apartheid meant, which was incredibly shocking to me. The idea that there is no occupation when the occupied territories are literally called the occupied territories. So there's a lot of propaganda. There's a lot of, we've gotten some really horrendous emails saying we're anti-Semitic, saying we're abominations. It's been really, this should be a simple vote to put it on the ballot, and the city of Burlington can vote on it. So I do encourage you to be active in talking to your friends and your neighbors, to be willing to say something at city council, because at the bare minimum, there should be the right to vote on it. I think I'll leave that there. But the last thing is just to think, since the last vote, the amount of destruction and death, and one of the latest war crimes is been shooting children in the head and the chest. That has now been established as an IDF policy. So much has happened in these months, and ideally I would hope that it would be looked at in a different light than it was by some of our fellow councilors. But as was said earlier, there's something that's said, and then there's the actual actions that don't measure up to that. And I guess we'll take some questions.
We are actually very over time.
Completely out of time.
So I recommend, Gina Milo, you're great and very approachable. Please ask them questions as you run into them on the way out, or we also have their emails in our agendas as well. So please reach out. And thank you, everyone. We have a quick raffle for some socks before we go, so I will pick a name. Andre? Oh, awesome. You have won socks. All right, thank you, everyone, for coming. Thank you, Gina Milo. We are meeting again in the new year on January 9th. See you then.